Hey friends, it's Alex and today I am sharing with you some of my favourite LGBT plus fantasy books. I recently uploaded a video talking about some of my favourite LGBT plus contemporary books, which I will link in whichever corner it gets linked in. But now I'm going to talk about some fantasy books as well. The two genres I read the most are contemporary and fantasy, so those are the genres I've kind of focused on. Yes, let's dive into the books. Once again, I'm starting with the book that has asexual rep because I'm asexual, and that is Raybearer by Jordan Ifweko. I loved this book so much, it was so good. Like, even without the asexual rep, it's just such a good fantasy book. It was so gripping. There have been so many fantasy books lately that have been like the fantasy debut of the year and they've just not been that great, and then this one was actually amazing. So I'm really happy about that. And the character is ace. They don't use that word, I assume just because it's a fantasy world. It's not set on our world, it's set on a made-up fantasy world. But the character, the ace character in this book, explicitly says, like, I don't feel sexual attraction. And I just loved it so much, and as soon as I read that line I was just like so happy that like we're getting rap in fantasy books now as well, and it's just great. I'm just so happy. And if you haven't read this book, you definitely should. Book 2 is coming out this year, I believe, and it's a duology, so it'll be completed this year, so you can read the whole thing in one go, and I think you will love it. Next up I have Cemetery Boys by Aidan Thomas. So this features a trans character and a male-male relationship, and it was just really cute. So it follows a Latinx main character named Yadriel, I think I was saying that right, and his family are struggling with accepting his gender because he is the transgender character, and they can see ghosts and stuff, and it was just a really cool story with some really cool rap in it, and I really enjoyed it, and it's definitely one that you should check out. Next up I sort of have like two books slash series. So we have Six of Crows, the Six of Crows duology, which has a male-male relationship in it. I really hope me saying this isn't spoilery, but oh well. And we have King of Scars, which has a female-female relationship in the duology. I've very recently read both of these and I love them both so much, and it was just really nice seeing the rap. It's just so nice seeing it in fantasy series as well, because people tend to be like, especially fantasy series not set on Earth or on our world or whatever, because people tend to be like, oh, I'm making a fantasy series, it's set in its own world, its world is kind of medieval inspired, and so that means it has to adhere strictly to what it was like in medieval Earth. And it's like, no, it's just medieval inspired, you can do whatever you want. But they just like exclude LGBT characters and make it really sexist, and it's like, why are you doing that? It's a made up world. So it's really nice to see fantasy books having more and more LGBT plus rep in them. It's great, I'm really loving it. Now moving on to some female-female relationships, and I have Cinderella is Dead by Kaylin Bayron. Once again, I really enjoyed this one. This one is a retelling of Cinderella, sort of, but like set after Cinderella, if that makes sense. Instead of directly retelling the fairy tale, it's set after the fairy tale. But it follows Sophia, and they're in a world where all of the women get to a certain age and they have to go to Prince Charming's palace and be selected by a man, and like that's it, that's the only options you have. And so she doesn't want that. And so I think she like runs away or something, and she meets a girl and they fall in love, and it's just really cute. I also really enjoyed the retelling aspect of this as well. Okay, next I have another one with a female-female relationship, and that is Girls of Paper and Fire by Natasha Nyan. First of all, I just want to say that this one has a trigger warning for sexual assault, so just be aware of that before you pick it up if you're interested. But But this series, I've only read the first book. It's going to be 3 books. I've only read the first book, so I'm going to be rereading this one this year when the last one comes out. I'm very excited. And this is set into a world where the people of this world are divided into castes, and every year 8 girls are chosen from the paper caste, I think, which is the lowest caste, to serve the king. Yes, and in this year our main character Lay is chosen, and while she's there she grows closer to one of the other girls and they fall in love. But this is a very hard-hitting story. Like I said, it's got trigger warning for sexual assault, so that's just something to be aware of. And the last book I'm going to mention today is one of my favourite books of all time, and that is The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. This is a very chunky book. It is like 800 pages, and this contains all sorts of LGBT plus representation, which is amazing. And my favourite thing about this book, one of the main relationships is sapphic as well, which is nice. One of my favourite things about this book was that in this world, it's not set in our world, it's set in a made up fantasy world. It's sort of medieval inspired, like there's not like the modern technology that we have now, and yet it's not gone to the extent of, oh well then in that case LGBT people don't exist and women are just there to serve their husbands and all this. Like, it's not like that at all, and all of the LGBT relationships in here were just like really normal. It's like, oh, there goes Jim and his husband. That's not accurate names, but like that's what it didn't like make a big deal out of it. It's just like, oh, here's this guy and he has a husband, and like it was just completely normal, in the same way that you'd be like, here's this girl and she has a husband, which I just love that so much. Like, we need more of that. We need more of it just being normal and not like this big thing that you make a big deal of every time it's mentioned. And also this book is full of epic dragons, which I love. And I know it can be very intimidating because of the size. I was very intimidated by it too, and it was one of the first adult fantasy more than 500 page books I ever read. There's something in it. Oh, okay. It was one of the first really, really long adult fantasy books I ever read, and I was worried I was gonna struggle with it or not get on with it or not like it, but it was so gripping and easy to read, and I was just so captivated by it. So it's definitely worth giving it a go if you're interested but a bit nervous. It is definitely not a super hard read, in my opinion. So those are some LGBT fantasy books that I love. There are more on my shelves, but I thought those were ones I would highlight this time round, and hopefully by next year I'll have read more and I can do like some massive long video. So I'm going to have another video going up next week, I think, which will be books on my TBR with asexual rep, which I'm really excited about that one. So I shall see you in that video, and thank you so much for watching. Bye!